Hello and welcome to the 13th episode of the Raceday Review. My name is JoeJets19. You can find me on Twitter at JoeJets19. My DraftKings and FanDuel handles are both JoeJets19. And with your help, we can get our YouTube page up at the URL youtube.com/racedayreview. Don't have that yet, need a couple of more subscribers, and by all means, rate, review, comment, subscribe, do whatever you can to both the Twitch channel as well as the YouTube page. History, both of these the show will be uploaded on both sites when we are done. And leave a comment. I'm on there all week just to check it out, see whatever anyone has to say. And if that doesn't work, you can always find me on YouTube, on Twitter. Well, we had a wild race at Phoenix this week. They decided to change the package. They went with a smaller spoiler. I think they did something um, with the radiator shield or something along those lines. Also, all in the hopes to decrease downforce, and they did. They wanted more passing. They got, I think there was 4 times as many passes this year as last year at the similar race, and it was just trades for the lead all over the place. A lot of passing, a lot of green flag passing. Didn't have to worry about pit stops for that, even though towards the end, lots of cautions, shuffled up the field a couple of times. We'll get into all of that fun stuff. But this was the race that they were looking for, and this is the race that they got. So I'm pretty sure NASCAR was very happy about the result. I could have been happier. We'll go over the ownerships and everything like that, but I loved me some Kevin Harvick, and I had some Kyle Busch also. Harvick got up front. Chase Elliott was able to hold them off a lot more than I thought. I knew Chase had a good car over the short run, but he fell off over the long run. I thought Harvick would be able to catch up to him in like 10 or 15 laps. I wasn't expecting Chase to hold him off for a good portion, but he was able to do it, which was very surprising for me. Um, and Elliott was actually my fade of the week, which didn't work out well whatsoever. I didn't full fade him. I had some. I think I was aiming for like 5 to 7% of them, just in case. I was more of a satellite play, just because this isn't the first time that Elliott has started this well, and he doesn't do well with it. He finished fifth, so he didn't. If he didn't lead as many laps as he did, he led 93 laps. He wouldn't have come anywhere close to being in the perfect lineup, but that's a big if. And this is not a track where starting in the top two was guaranteed to be dominators. It turns out that both guys that started in the front row, Harvick and Elliott, did end up in the perfect lineup. But that is more the exception than the rule when it comes here. So that was it. Overall, this race broke a whole lot of rules that um, didn't really trends that you didn't really see in previous races. But with the new package, they said it would race a little bit more like 2018, but this is even much wilder than 2018 was. So it was a fun race to watch, and let's get into the picks. So going into the race, I was looking for at least 1 to 2 drivers. I knew there would be at least one driver that led 90 laps. Um, Now, led more than 90 laps would end up being if it's 100, 120. There's some drivers have led as many as like 160 or 170. There are 312 laps being run at Phoenix, which is always odd because it's the FanShield 500. Why in the holy hell is the FanShield 500 only 312 laps? Because they measure it in kilometers. I have no idea why they do kilometers for this race and only this race. It might not be only this race. It might be one or two other ones. Um, but by all means, that is an oddity. And another weird thing about this race is that it had 3 different stage lengths. Usually the first 2 stages are the same length, and they might extend the third stage just to make sure that you have to make at least one green flag pit stop to make things a little interesting. There's some tracks that you don't actually have to stop at all, that you can make the whole stage in fuel. Some tracks that you have to pit at least once, but you'll definitely get a green flag stop on the last stage of pretty much every track. Um, but this actually had three unique stage lengths, which is weird. A lot of weird things about the setup of this race. You could also cut off a corner of it for no apparent reason. Harvick was the first one to do that, and that's where he led to his dominance. Now you see you're getting five wides on some of these restarts because some people were cutting them off, some people couldn't get there. It was just insanity left, right, and center, which made for fun for a good watch. But I was looking for at least two drivers. I wanted at least one to two drivers, usually high-priced drivers that started close to the front. It didn't have to be a driver that started in the front row. This time it was. Keselowski led more laps than Harvick, 20 more laps than Harvick, and he ended up starting 13th, I believe, 13th or 14th. We will look at the loop data right now. Keselowski started 14th, and he had 25% of the laps led. And then also Logano, the winner, started 13th right in front of him, and he had 19% of the laps led. So you didn't really need to be starting well to finish well here or lead a bunch of laps here. So the range of possible dominators was a little bit all over the place. My top picks were Harvick. That's funny. Um, I have one comment already, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I didn't get the Mustang for uh, the Kevin Harvick giveaway that they were doing for Daytona, but Fords haven't looked as good as they've been in the last couple of years, but the Fords still look pretty fast. So besides the Dominators, I was looking for at least 3 to 4 drivers. That all depends on how many drivers we think are going to be dominating. That could finish in the top 10. They didn't have to pick up too many spots. I had a couple of years in a row. They've had at least a driver that started like 7th and finished 7th, and they were able to make it in the perfect lineup. So it's kind of what you're looking for there. They didn't have to make massive moves, and as you see in the perfect lineups, we actually had 4 drivers that started in the that finished in the top 10. Unfortunately, 2 of those were our dominators, so we actually only had 2 of those drivers make it into the lineup. And then finally, this is a place where a low price driver, someone under $6,000, would be able to make it into the perfect lineup, and McDowell fit that bill. I thought they would need to pick up at least 10 spots. I was thinking more of a driver starting in the 35th and finishing 25th. McDowell ended up only picking up 4 spots, but because of his price, he ended up fitting in there. So this was really a unique lineup setup because they actually had 3 high-priced drivers. You had Logano at 10.7, Harvick at 11.3, and Elliott at 9,600. So that didn't leave any room for the mid-range, and that's where a lot of the ownership was. So it was a little interesting that way. Um, so let's go into it. Joey Logano, the winner of the race. Starting 13th, he finished first and he picked up 60 laps led. I was nowhere near Logano. I missed him entirely. I didn't really like him. I had him in 5%, but the whole field didn't really have him too much because he was 12% owned in the $4 and 13% owned in the $10. His average finish, not great at all, 19.6. He usually qualifies well, very well, and plummets. So his average place differential is not great either. So this is not one of his best tracks historically. Obviously, his similar tracks, he's a good driver, so he's always got a top 10 finish. His single lap speeds were top 10, but not anything that you would really go off on. And Logano's 10 lap average, 15 lap average, and 20 lap average were all the third fastest, but he was behind Keselowski as well as Kevin Harvick. So I much rather my ownership went to those guys. I took a little bit of Logano just as a hedge because you never know, he could always win a race, which he ended up doing, but he just wasn't, yeah, he just wasn't in anywhere near. My model projected him to be a 5th place finish. His average was 10.4, and I had his ceiling as a 4th place finish. The only thing that would have tipped me off that he would have done as well as he did last time is his 10 lap averages. His long run in second practice would have been kind of a tip, but his history was just so terrible that I just don't know. Yeah, it's one of those weeks that you take it on the chin. You didn't There wasn't enough there for me to really be on Logano in any sort of way. Maybe I'll put a little more stock coming up next time on the 10 lap averages, but I wasn't alone. I was underweight on the field, but the field wasn't really there. Ty Dillon, 6,200, started 25th, finished 15th. He, on the other hand, was slightly more owned, I believe. I didn't check out the ownership, but I know I had a more. So I had him in 30% of my lineups, and looks like the field had him about 25%. His average finish in Phoenix was 18.5, which is great considering his 25th this 25th starting position. His average run position here is 21st, so it's not really like he capitalized on any accidents or things like that. He just runs well here. His similar finishes isn't awesome, but that's to be expected because he's not an awesome driver. So it's one of those types of things I would prefer to look at his track history here as opposed to his similar track history, just because he might not be good at every track, but there are some ones he likes. His single lap times were nice in practice. His 10 lap average, not great. I projected him for 21st finish, which isn't awesome, but my model actually had him as a 14.5 as average finish between all 10 of the models. So that is pretty impressive. The ceiling of 3 was a little excessive, but he popped on one model. So I should have had more on him probably. I liked other drivers. He was a little more expensive than a driver that I liked just because of the price, which is Bubba Wallace. Again, I had him in 20%, but in my hand builds, I gravitated to Wallace a lot because he was starting further back. Wallace started 27th. His practice times were terrible, but I like the ceiling that he provides. Every now and then you'll find Wallace in the top 15 just because. I He finished 19th, which is great. My model predicted him as a 26, so they didn't like his speed either. But I had a ceiling of a 17th place finish, which starting 4 places behind Ty Dillon, I liked that a lot. Again, he wouldn't have nearly as good of an average finish here, so that's what makes him more of a GPP play. I had him in 20%. That's actually maybe I could have bumped him to 30 and bumped him to Ty Dillon because both of them paid off their salary pretty nicely. But that's more hindsight than anything. Harvick, I thought was the man of the hour. He, I went into the week looking for any reason to fade Harvick. Harvick at Phoenix is what everyone always talks about. That's what everyone always loves. But his last 7 races here, he hasn't been great. He has 1 win, which you can't take the win away from him. But he wasn't really dominating at any point. He wasn't doing anything to. Everyone talks about how great Harvick is, but he wasn't actually showing how great he could be here. So I wanted any reason whatsoever to not play him, and then he goes out and qualifies second and turns in his. No, damn, that wasn't supposed to happen. I apologize. Qualifies second and turns in the best 10 lap average, the second best 15 lap average, the second best um, 20 lap average, right behind Keselowski. So he had a great car over the long run, not a great car over the short run. So I thought it would take some time for him to get to Elliott, which it did. But I thought once he got there, he was going to run away with it. Unfortunately for us, and the 38% of other people that played him, I almost doubled the field at 65%. So I told you I loved him. I loved him. I absolutely loved him. Unfortunately for us, Once he got up front, his car went to shit. It got real loose in clean air, and that's why he wasn't able to hold off Chase Elliott, because Elliott's car was much better on the short run and it did not fall off too much when it got to the dirty air. So Harvick actually needed to get behind Elliott to get a run again to stay up front, which was pretty interesting. I really thought that this was going to be Harvick's race. I thought he was going to lead at least 100 laps. Got to 60. He was able to be, he was in the perfect lineup, so that is all that. But I'm actually interested to see where his ownership stacked up. I thought he'd be at least 45 to 50% owned. I was way off on that. Sort that the other way. And actually, Elliott was the much higher owned driver, and I only had 10% of him, which we'll get there in right now. Chase Elliott started first, finished 7th. This is not a race where the guys starting first um, really dominate. So I am very surprised at how highly owned he was. I was way under, so if I needed him to do poorly. I really did, but he did not. His average finish here is 15.5 because he runs into trouble. He qualifies well and falls back. His average running position here is 9th, so he does normally hang out for a little bit and then fades after that. Great over the short run, not great over the long run. Um, his actual finish was 7th. I predicted him for a 4th place finish, so I didn't think he was just going to blow up entirely. But I didn't think he was going to be able to hold off Harvick, and then I didn't think he was going to be able to catch up to him once as the race progressed. I was in the minority by a long shot, it would seem. So that was difficult. I was expecting Kyle Busch to be much higher owned. I had him at 60% of my lineups. The field had him at 27th. He has been the dominator here. The last couple of years, he's led more than 100 laps in 4 of the last 5 races, I believe, or 3 of the last 4 races, one of those two. And so I was really expecting him to come from 10th place and race his way to the beginning up front. He didn't think he was going to win, but I thought the way I thought the race was going to play out is Elliott leads the first like 15 laps. Harvick leads until the end of the stage and maybe a little bit in the next stage, and then um, Kyle Busch catches up to him and takes off. So that's why I didn't have as much Brad Keselowski, because in that scenario, then um, if that were to have happened, Keselowski wouldn't have had any chance to lead any laps. And I didn't like him for certain reasons, so I figured I would split the difference and do 60-40 to Kyle over Kez, and that's where I got that ownership percentage from. I figured Kyle would be the higher owned driver, which he was by a shade. But I also thought he had a much higher chance of being a major dominator, so that's why I liked him much more. He was good over the short run, not the best over the long run. He had some um, built-in place differential points, which I preferred. I projected him to finish first, so I thought he'd get up there. He actually finished third, so again, a solid finish for him. His model average finish was 2.3, so I really liked him. He just wasn't able to dominate, and he hasn't had a dominating performance yet, and he's gonna get there. There's gonna be a race that he just blows the field away, and then that's gonna start him on a roll. Now these guys I was not on either. Cole Custer starting 16th, finished 9th. Let's see what I can dig up for old Coley boy. Now that these aren't in alphabetical order, gonna be a hard time for me finding. So Cole Custer, I had 10% of them. The field had about 14 to 15%. I kind of guessed on these, so you can't go by that. He had a single lap average of 18, a 10 lap average of 10th. What was his average running position for the race? His average position was 14th, so he's one of the drivers that benefited from a lot of all of the late race shenanigans with all the crashes and things like that. He didn't really run that well. Started 16th. He averaged running in the 14th. He picked up some spots late. The big difference to put him in the perfect lineup. Um, these rookies, I preferred Reddick at a similar price. Reddick was actually much more expensive, I believe. And they were all in the 6,000 range. So I went with the chalk instead. Where's my man Tyler Reddick? I had him in 45% of the lineups, about 10% more than the field. Again, I guessed on these things because he's a rookie. Okay on the short runs, didn't really like him. Better on the longer runs, but starting 29th. That's what I really liked for a driver in around the same experience level. They were both great drivers in Xfinity, but I'd rather a driver starting 29th than a driver starting 16th. So that was the big difference for me. He actually finished 33rd because he had a problem. I projected him for a 19th place finish, which would have been perfectly fine. That would have landed him in the perfect lineup pretty easily. Cole Custer, I projected for a 17th place finish. I want to see where Tyler's average running position was. Reddick's average running position was 14th, which is the same one as Cole Custer, except for the fact that Reddick didn't finish the race. So that was a real disappointing way. I think he cut a tire, slammed the wall, and ended him. So Reddick was good chalk for most of the race, and that's what really hurt. That's when my day started going south. Um, it's one of those plays where you gotta trust the process and not trust the results. Yes, he was higher owned than I would have liked, but a fast driver with a good track history, even though it was on Xfinity, starting way further down than he qualified. It is what it is. There are weeks you can't win them all, um, but at least knowing the theory behind it and why this driver would do well or should do well is part of the game, so you can make the decisions next time. Like maybe um, that's the whole point of doing this video actually. When it first started it was playoff time last year, and I might as well I do a preview article, but I never really talk about well what happened after everything. So you might as well do a review show, see what I miss, what I not miss. You know, single lap times are much better than 10 lap averages, much more predictive, which they haven't really been. The 10 laps are the way to go. Like Ty Dillon, you know, the Phoenix history is much more important than the similar history. So all things like that, which brings me to Michael McDowell. Not very highly owned anywhere, and that's actually why he was not in the winning lineup. So this is the first week this year that the perfect lineup was not the winning lineup, and that is because no one had Michael McDowell. Everyone had Daniel Suarez, so we'll talk about him. But so McDowell less than 3% owned because he was starting so far forward. He averaged a 26th place finish with losing a spot. His average Phoenix running position is 27, so it's not like he just crashes late. He just doesn't run well here. His similars are better than his average, but still not great. His single lap team time was poor. His 10 lap average was poor. Um, I projected him for a 28th place finish. That's why I didn't have any of them. Let's look at the loop data. How did you get up there? His average position was 25th. So again, two drivers that just kind of shuffled in towards the end, kind of like buying a lottery ticket. Okay, it is what it is. There's not much I can do. That's why you mass multi-enter and you hope that of your 5 teams that have McDowell in it, one of them has a good combination of other things. Um, Yeah, so that one just hurts. Daniel Suarez. Where are we? Also not very highly owned, only about 7% owned. I had him in 15% of my lineup, so I inadvertently doubled the field. He runs great here, but again, that's in much inferior equipment. He runs great at similar tracks, again, inferior. So I'm running this great as the fact that he starts in the 30s now. He practiced in the 30s. He finished 21st. Even with his good history, that was not enough to get him to finish, get my models to really like him too much. He, again, averaged run. His average run position is 27th, so that's not really what you're looking for. So overall, it's the late cautions really threw a curveball into everything, and that really shuffled up the leaderboard. So the winner of the Piston and the winner of the Chrome Horn had the same lineup, not the same person. I think the Piston tied, were a two-person tie. The Chrome Horn was just a one-person winner. I think he took it home by himself. But neither one of them were actually the perfect lineup. So that's always interesting when something like that happens because there was a lineup out there that was better. It's just no one had it in those tournaments. If you're wondering why we were looking at the loop data, the fastest laps are different or in a different color. It's because I'm not too sure if these are actually the real fastest laps or not. This is what the loop data had from where I get my data driver averages, but it's different than what the DraftKings scoring had it. So that's a little difficult because if you look at Elliott, he had 60 fastest laps, so that would be 30 points. He had 93 laps led, so that would be about 23 roughly. So that's 53 points. He finished 7th, which would be another 30 odd points. So, and then he lost 7. So that doesn't really add up to that score. I just happened to pick him because he had the most laps led. But let's do it real quick. 5 plus 30. So he would have needed 31 31 finishing position points minus the place differential, which would have been 37, and the scoring 43. Yeah, so it was off by a couple. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know if we have a bad loop data or what's happening. I can actually look real quick to see how many fastest laps led Elliott had very quickly. I apologize. Let me just do it. I try not to be on the phone. On the stream on the Twitch, I'll do the phone, but not when we do the race day review. Of course, I picked the wrong contest to look at this at. So they had him with the right fastest laps. I'm trying to figure out. We were having a discussion about where did all the fastest laps go if they didn't go to the right people. 25 for Logano, which is right, and then because the biggest difference is Tyler Reddick. Reddick was not scored with 39 fastest laps, and that's got everyone up in a tizzy a little bit. Well, I guess anyone who's noticed. They scored Reddick with 11 fastest laps and not 39. So I put that in red just to be sure, because I don't know how true it is. because they have 57 for Harvick, so that's right. They had 9 for Kyle Busch, which is right. So it's weird to see where they actually ended up. 12 for Austin Dillon, which I think is laughable, but still correct. 3 for Bubba Wallace, also. See, Bubba Wallace is different too. They have one extra fastest lap for Bubba. One, yeah, one extra fastest lap for Bubba Wallace. So just I found one driver that was right for. But so there are 38 here somewhere, but not with any of the big guys because that probably would have been noticed much quicker. So that's the first time I've seen them do that. It's kind of weird. Let's just go over very quickly where we were at the field. Underweight on Alex Bowman didn't really hurt me. Only scored 25 points. Underweight on Almirola. I thought that he started way too high. Austin Dillon hurt me. Hurt everyone. 40% owned. He had a great average finish. Not the best practice times, but he ran into a problem, and that's what did him in. I projected him for a 22nd place finish, which would have been fine at his price. That pretty much just screwed everyone. I believe he wrecked early, if I remember correctly. Kozlowski, I went over him. I didn't like him because of his history. He practiced well. He's great on the long run, starting 14th, but he only had like 2 top 10s in the last 6 races here, and that scared me. Chris Buescher, I had 25% of him just because he's Chris Buescher. There's no real reason to. Picked up 6 spots. Okay, 33 points, not going to hurt you. Christopher Bell hasn't been doing much. I had 20% of Boyer, which he was my big pivot off of. I liked. Um, who did I like? I liked William Byron a lot. I thought that range was going to be very important because I thought I'd be able to get two high price guys and a mid range guy. So my choices were between Clint Boyer and William Byron. Boyer outperformed him by about 10 points at similar ownership, 11 points, but I doubled. I had twice as much Byron as I did Boyer because they had similar average finishing positions, but um, I believe, yeah, Byron had the much better car. So I really like Byron over Boyer. Both of them worked out okay. Both of them paid off their salary, but Boyer was the play here, which was what would have tipped me off from that is again the average finishing as opposed to the practice, but I still uh, one of those races. What were they running? Let's check that out real quick. Clint Boyer average rank position of 11th. Byron's averaging run position of 13th. So Boyer was ahead of Byron for on average most of the race. Corey LaJoy, nothing really there. Suarez, we went over. Hamlin only scored 10 points. I thought that was a 10% hedge. I thought he had an outside chance of dominating because he was starting third, and he won here last year starting third, but his car just wasn't really there. It was a little better than Logano's, but he got caught up early and didn't really do much with it. Eric Jones, I liked him because of I thought he would be a mid-range driver who started well and just had to pick up a couple of spots and finish in the top 10. Ran into car issues, so that didn't work out there. Again, I was twice as heavy on them as the field. Jimmy Johnson cost way too much. I didn't think he had a way to pay off a salary at 9,000 starting 20th. There's no place different. There's starting 21st. There was place differential potential, but no dominator potential. And thought with that price you need to be able to dominate a little bit. Let's see, anything else fun? I wasn't really had on Kurt Busch because he started too well. Kyle Busch, we went over. Kyle Larson, I thought he started too far up and he wouldn't be able to pay off his Salary, I didn't like him as a dominator at all. And Ricky Stenhouse Jr., just like Bubba Wallace, I always like his opportunity to finish well. He might not be a high floor play, but he was definitely a high ceiling play. My projected finish was 18th, but my model average for him is 14th and a ceiling of 6th. So another driver who I thought was safe enough that he wouldn't. I mean, no, I can never say that about Ricky Stenhouse Jr. He could blow up at any minute. I thought he'd be about 20% owned, and got him a little higher. So I figured, I mean, with a 16th place average finish here, he had some equity in that, and he had a good car on the short runs, but not as good on the long runs, and actually the short run speed ticked me into him a little too far. For the price, I thought he had a good ceiling, but overall not the best option, it turns out. Chastain, keep playing him a little bit as long as he's in the good spot. I had no Ryan Blaney because this is one track he does not do well at, and he qualified 5th. That worked out swimmingly. That was probably my best call of the entire race, unfortunately. And we went over the rest of these guys. So, sorry to cut it a little short towards the end. The NBA slate's starting. I probably could have stretched another 5 minutes like I normally do. But again, if you guys have any questions, thank you very much. Please, by all means, reach out to me on Twitter. Uh, Leave a comment on the Twitch video. I'll probably stream later on tonight, so I'll be active on that. You could always find me on YouTube. Um, the YouTube, just gotta look for the race day review where all of these are posted. Um, Thank you very much. I'll be back next Monday to go over. We're going to Atlanta. All right. Have a good week.